Meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission of the City of Ames will come to order February 18th, 2026. The Planning and Zoning Commission is an independent advisory body of the City of Ames City Council. The Planning and Zoning Commission members are volunteers of the community and not part of the city administration. The Planning and Zoning Commission is supported by staff from the city's planning division. The commission is responsible for recommendations on matters involving subdivisions, annexations, master plans, and major site development plans, amendments to the zoning ordinance, and comprehensive plan amendments. We make our recommendations based on city codes, the facts presented, and input from the public. As an advisory commission, we welcome all comments regarding the proposed item. Please direct your input to the commission. If the proceedings become lengthy, we may ask that comments be focused on new information not previously presented. You may speak only once on an agenda item. If you wish to speak, please fill out a speaker information card up front and present it to the recording secretary. We ask that you come to the microphone to speak so that all comments may be recorded. The order of the proceeding for each item on the agenda will be as follows. City staff will present the staff report regarding the agenda item. Commission members will have an opportunity to ask questions of city staff. The applicant will be invited to make a statement regarding the request. Commission members will have an opportunity to ask questions of the applicant. Members of the audience will be invited to come forward to offer comments and questions. Once public comment is closed, city staff and the applicant will have an opportunity for concluding remarks. The commission will discuss the application based on all presentations and any comments given, and come to a recommendation for City Council. The discussion may include further questions of city staff and the applicant for clarification. And with that, we will move into the first item on the agenda, which is introduction of commission members.
Julie Winter.
Cheryl Moss.
Matthew Voss.
Mike Clayton.
Jim Lickenstorf.
All right, we'll move to the next item, which is approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make the motion to approve.
Second.
We have a first and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Move on to approval of the minutes. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor of approving the minutes,
Aye.
signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. So now we'll move on to the public forum. This is a chance for anyone from the public to comment on something that is not on the agenda. So we'll open the public forum if anyone would like to come up. Seeing none, we will close the public forum and move on to agenda item 6, which is rezone with master plan for property located at 1323 Northwestern Avenue from residential low density RL to Government Airport District SGA.
Yep. Good evening, everyone. Parker Walsh, assistant planner on staff. And as the chair mentioned tonight, I'll be going over the rezoning for the Ames Community School District. This is a 10.10 acre property shown here in the hatching. The request today is for 1323 to be rezoned from residential low density or RL to Government Airport District, which is also called SGA, and I'll refer to that later in the report. And this would include a master plan as well. And this property was previously owned by Lutheran Services, which is located to the north here. And it was operated as a school and administrative services. But the school district did purchase this property in 2023. And they're now requesting a rezoning to SGA, which is intended to provide flexibility. And the additional administrative uses would be allowed in SGA. Currently, it's zoned RL, as is much of the surrounding property. I can pull up a map here. So you can see here, much of the surrounding area is RL. And so what that means for this property today under the school district is the institutional use, which is what they're going for, would be allowed. However, it does require a special use permit and Board of Adjustment approval. So that means any additional uses or site improvements would require more scrutiny and review by the Board of Adjustment. Whereas if they were rezoned to SGA, and this zone is intended for school districts, they would have more flexibility and it would be an administrative review moving forward. And although this zone is more flexible, it does include a master plan, which I'm showing you here. And this is just intended guided development for future uses. So the general building sizes, traffic layout should generally be guided by this document here, and any major changes would require an amendment and rezoning to this document. The rezoning to SGA would also be consistent with other school district properties. So this is another reason why they're looking for this zone. And the site does currently contain several buildings, but they are looking to add a couple. If you can see here, the one labeled building addition and the one labeled IT and storage. They would be looking for this west building to be their IT and storage building moving forward. But the one labeled building addition is mainly just a placeholder at this time. They don't have an intended use at this stage, but it would be consistent with the school district, which would be office uses. There's a food pantry now proposed, a rental space. This is intended to be a community event space, not event space, but open to the public and rentable for public uses. And the master plan does also show several outdoor uses, such as the trail extension through the site, the traffic garden, playground space, a community garden. As mentioned, it is intended to be used by the community, not just the school district. And the site does also propose in improving the traffic layout. So if you can see here, just a minute. This access drive off of 13th is actually proposed to extend all the way through the site now to a brand new access point on this northeast corner off of Northwestern. And so that is intended to just improve traffic through the site, especially with it possibly be zoned for school uses, just to improve traffic as the use may intensify. But this existing access down here in the southeast corner, it wasn't intended to improve or to add a drop-off zone, but staff did have some concerns, mainly due to potential impacts like congestion on this roadway here, especially being so close to the intersection of 13th. And so we did share those concerns with the applicant, and they did agree to revise this master plan prior to council, and they would remove that access point. So the document you see here would change slightly to alter this drop-off area, but primarily to show that this access point would be removed. I do also want to add that this is consistent with the Ames Plan 2040, and it is designated by the future land use map as civic. And so those are uses that are intended for government facilities, schools, the airport, and other public services. So that is consistent with the SGA rezoning, which is also intended primarily for those uses and government entities. And so it is consistent and will remain operated by the school district and for schooling purposes. I do also want to add that the applicant did hold a meeting with the public a few months ago in December to get the neighborhood informed on what project they wanted to bring forward. They also recently sent out a courtesy notice about this rezoning tonight. And from the feedback we heard from the school board is that there is general support for this project, but staff did receive one piece of correspondence in opposition tonight, which I did share with you all. And that was mainly related to the existing and the future drainage courses. So we did meet with Public Works just to discuss the stormwater in more detail. And that will be reviewed by the future site plans that will be required for any future improvements. It's not something we usually get into much detail at this stage at the master plan. This is just a general layout, but that concern is valid and will be reviewed by staff moving forward. I do also want to add that the groundwater flowage, which was Part of the complaint as well is not regulated by the city. We didn't have a policy for groundwater flow. So that is something that the property owners would have to look into on their own time. I just want to say that this is consistent with the comprehensive plan, and the rezoning is consistent with the existing and future land use for the school district. And with that, the staff would recommend alternative 1, which is to approve this rezoning. And now turn it over to the commission.
All right. Do we have any questions for city staff?
I guess I just wanted to, I know that you did address the email that we received already. And it sounds like that's out of the requirements for what city staff are required to review at this particular time. Could you elaborate at all for this site plan? Number 1, are we going to see that in the future, or would that be something that would go directly to council? And then number 2, it sounds like the groundwater concern cannot be addressed by the city review of the development. Did I understand that correctly?
Yep, you understood that correctly. That is not a policy that the city has or regulates right now. So groundwater concerns are really out of our control. But the stormwater would be required to remain on this property when we look at it in the future. And as for the site plan, you would not be reviewing that in the future. That would be administrative review.
I just want to clarify, just to make sure everybody heard that you don't have to keep your stormwater on the site. That's not the standard. You have to treat your stormwater and control its release consistent with city standards. So don't take from that comment that it can't leave the site. That's not the actual standard. So just to be clear. So the issues that are being talked about by that neighbor do relate to Iowa drainage law, which isn't necessarily a city issue that we can manage. And as Parker said, groundwater is something that we don't have standards for. I think your other question is who would review the site plan. So the process of getting to SGA zoning makes all site approvals administrative versus if it stayed in a different type of zoning district like the residential zone that it is now. It's a zoning board of adjustment, a permit of a special use permit to approve major changes to the site or for new construction on the site.
So I guess then just in general, for any member of the public who would have concerns about this runoff issue, it sounds like it's out of the purview of this particular process, but it would be a civil matter later is how that would go.
That's correct. Once we get into the site plan phase, staff would take a much closer look at that and make sure that they meet all requirements.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for city staff right now? Okay, so then we'll move on. Is the applicant here to make a statement?
All right. Hi, I'm Melissa Goodwin. I'm the project manager with Tenfold Architecture and Engineering that worked on this project and submitted the application. I didn't exactly have a statement prepared per se, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. But I think as Parker mentioned, our intent behind this is to help create kind of like a centerpiece for the Ames community. The school district's intent is to be able to provide additional resources for students, faculty, and staff of the school district, as well as the general public and surrounding neighborhoods. And so, the combination of some of the exterior and outdoor kind of spaces for the community to enjoy, as well as some of the rentable spaces in the buildings, an improved drop-off lanes and circulation through the site is also beneficial to the parents and students that are attending the homeschool assistance program and the therapeutic classrooms in that center building there. I think the intent behind the applying for the rezoning is that, as it stands, the current functions are allowed, as Parker said, under the the special use permit, I believe it was. But in order to kind of create the greater vision that the school district has for this site and kind of maximize the potential, we do see the SGA rezoning as the best option that will allow the greatest flexibility. Currently, I don't believe office spaces are allowed in the residential low density zoning district. So spaces like the Odland building there at the south, the kind of L-shaped building, that would house a couple offices for, I believe, the alumni group and the school foundation, as well as having some rentable meeting and conference spaces. And then having that IT and storage building along the west would allow for the IT staff of the district to relocate their offices here. This is a much more kind of centrally located location relative to all of the school district's properties in the city, as compared to, I think, like the facilities building that's out on Bell. And this would just provide a nice central location for that IT staff, as well as storage for some curriculum materials, furniture, things like that. And so, the rezoning is kind of necessary to allow for some of those uses. As Parker said, with that existing southeast access drive that is shown on this plan, we will be providing an updated plan that eliminates that, and we will maintain that southern parking lot, and it would probably just be kind of squared off, maybe provide a couple extra parking spots, but just really extend that drop off lane so that it continues around kind of to the south and then curve around to the west a little bit there. So if you guys have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Any questions for the applicant?
Very, very beautiful site plan.
I had nothing to do with that, but thank you.
All right.
All right, thank you very much.
Since I'm here. Give me a microphone. Scott Grimes, Superintendent of Schools. Been with the district for a year and a half. I've been in the state of Iowa for a long time. When first hired, reached out to community, reached out to the city. There's always been conversations about we need to unite, we need to work together, kind of phase in. And there's always questions about our rental properties and pickleball and gym use space, which is always, I know as an administrator of a district, is always an essential use for the public. Knowing that this site, when I initially walked through the door, I was pretty much told that everything in this site should be torn down except for the building that we're renovating. I saw value in some of the buildings to repurpose and reuse for the benefit of not only the district, for the community as well as the neighborhoods. Ultimate goal was to try to at least get that 3-story eyesore down as quick as we could, to beautify it, and then also to provide safe space for students, children, grandkids within the property. Also to beautify it so that we're raising value around the property versus it being something that people fear might decrease value of it. So I appreciate the opportunity I've had to work with the city leaders and some conversations around how we can, school district and city can align with things. And when it comes down to the rental places of it also, I just want to talk about the traffic garden because you had no questions about the traffic garden. Traffic garden is a nice, safe place for kids to learn how to ride their bikes, pedal. It's got like crosswalks on it, and it's a place they can learn to ride bikes, and maybe even law enforcement can use it as a day for helmets and practicing and engagement with that area. So I just wanted to speak towards that, and thank you for the opportunity, and enjoy projects like this. This is a phase-in project also. If we were to complete it at one time, it's currently projected at a $13 million project. We know we don't have the funds for that, but as it goes, we have a phase-in project so that it'll be a continual improvement as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything for me?
All right, thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to the public forum for this agenda item. We'll open the public forum. If anyone here would like to come up and speak, you can do so. Introduce yourself and say your address and offer your comments. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the public forum for this agenda item. Do we have any closing remarks from city staff or the applicant?
I do just want to add that what you see here tonight on the master plan, there are a range of building sizes and they may vary a little bit, but this plan should not vary substantially or it will come back to you.
All right, any other questions or discussion from the commission? All right, do we have a motion?
I'll make that motion. I motion that for alternative 1, that the Planning and Zoning Commission can recommend that the City Council approve the master plan for rezoning the property at 1323 Northwestern Avenue from RL Residential Low Density Zone to SGA Government Airport District with an updated master plan removing the south driveway prior to consideration of rezoning by the City Council.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. All right, on to agenda item number 7. Zoning text amendment regarding a new overlay district, West University Pedestrian Enhancement District between Sheldon Avenue and Highland Avenue, north of Lincoln Way and south of Oakland Street.
Lost your crowd.
Good evening. I guess no public comment on this one tonight. So this is a text amendment, but it was spurred by redevelopment of 2 properties. They're shown in yellow on the screen there at the corner of Oakland and Highland. But I want to point out that even though this was the result of a request for 2 properties, it is a text amendment for a larger area. Generally south of Oakland, north of Lincoln Way, west of Sheldon, and along Highland Avenue. So right near like the west side of campus. The main thing we're doing here is amending an overlay that exists in the area, which requires 25% more parking than other parts of the city to reduce that parking requirement. And then we're also introducing an increase in density allowed within the residential high density district that applies to this area. Before we get into the details of the amendment, I did just want to talk about our future land use plan for this area. It's unique. It's a designated RN4, or Residential Neighborhood 4, which is a new designation from Plan 2040. We don't have an implementing zoning district for it yet, but its purpose is to really encourage high-density housing and mixed uses and walkability and redevelopment. The designation does indicate the potential need for an area plan to guide redevelopment. That might address things such as streetscape improvements or district identification improvements. However, with this text amendment, we're not doing an area plan. We're really just looking at amending our code to allow for a new district to be applied to individual properties to facilitate their redevelopment. So I just wanted to point that out as we're talking through this. Council determined, the focus of this area is small, along Highland and Sheldon mainly. So a broader sub area plan wasn't needed. We could just move into the text amendment. We do to the west have some area designated for redirection or a larger redevelopment and infill, and so that will see an area plan developed for it. But for this area, we're just looking at this text amendment. We're not looking at, we didn't do further study and outreach with the neighborhood. So what the amendment does, again, it's creating a new zoning overlay. So individual property owners can apply to have that applied to their property if they're within this area and meet certain requirements. The benefit of that to the property owner would be a reduction in parking. So we are proposing one space per unit for 1 and 2 bedroom units. This is modeled after zoning districts with similar access to campus or transit. We did also include a provision that for mixed uses, we can count the residential spaces provided towards the requirement for commercial spaces. We do have a mixed use core at the center of this area that we wanted to also include in this text amendment. And I will note, while we modeled this after other zoning districts, such as our downtown zoning district or campus town zoning district and their parking rates, we did do a parking survey. And we did find that usage and provision of parking in this area is about 1 space per bedroom. So for 1 bedroom units, 1 space per unit as proposed meets that requirement. For 2 bedroom units, it is a little bit lower. It is a parking reduction, but again, we are within 500 feet of campus. So staff believes that that's appropriate. And then the other main benefit would be density, an increase in density. So right now, our density is measured based on units per acre. So units doesn't take into account how many bedrooms or actual occupancy you might see. So what we're proposing to do instead is make the density in this overlay based on the number of bedrooms on a project. So that will allow us to accommodate more 1 and 2 bedroom units without really changing the scale or densities within the area. Within this general area, we do see about 2 bedrooms per unit. So if we take the current density of 38 units per acre and multiply that by 2 for 2 bedrooms, you'd see probably about 78 bedrooms per acre. We are proposing 83, which isn't much more than 78, which is pretty much the current density for this area if we went by bedroom. But that is to accommodate the applicant's project. We don't believe it'll increase scale or height. So then the other aspect of this text amendment is a setback reduction. So for developments with units, residential units on the first floor that face a street facade, we are proposing a 15-foot setback that will need other softening elements. We are allowing up to 4-story buildings in this area. We think it'll help facilitate redevelopment. But again, I just wanted to point out, we're not really looking at doing any streetscaping improvements, street trees in this area. So when we talk about softening elements, I just want to remind the commission that we will have front yard landscaping on these projects, but no real cohesive, streetscaping or other district improvement. And then the final element of the text amendment I wanted to bring up is with all these, with the parking reduction and the density increase, the setback reduction, we are requiring certain design standards for glazing, clay brick, entrance enhancements that reflect the current, we have a current university impacted overlay that has some of these requirements. So we are trying to keep all of those requirements plus introduce a few more to enhance the pedestrian environment and interaction with buildings in this area. I will bring up that we did receive a letter from a property owner and manager of multiple properties in this area today. I think it was generally supportive. However, they would like to see the area broadened to include Campus Avenue. And I think they would also like to see, rather than this apply just to new construction buildings, have it also apply to additions in the area, or if there's empty space within a building that gets converted into units. have the parking reduction or density increases apply to those as well. And again, when we looked at this area, it is a pretty small area. We do have other plans for redirection to the west of this area, so that's why campus wasn't initially included. But in terms of additions and conversions, I think our main goal with this was to encourage redevelopment, but encourage it meeting certain design standards. And I think it gets more difficult to make sure a project is meeting design standards for entrance improvements, facade improvements, when it's an addition on a building that might not otherwise be compliant, or especially with space inside a building that's being converted. I mean, what would we require practically for a property owner to do to receive those benefits of increased density? While, not necessarily improving the facade or look of their building. So we need to work through that some more if it were to be included, what that would look like for conversions and additions. So we are recommending that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend to council adopt the ordinance as presented. I know that we've talked about some, changes, but I think it's a pretty small area in terms of redevelopment. We really don't anticipate redevelopment of all of the properties, maybe 10. And I can talk more about what those impacts would be, but I think it'll be a small impact, but an important one for encouraging redevelopment in this area. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions?
I have two questions. The first one is, I'm not sure I understand why the schedule is set. Parking spaces per density unit as 1 for 1 and 2 bedrooms, 2.5 for 3, 3 for 4, 4 for 5. Is that consistent with other places in the city where 3 bedrooms are given 2.5, or the 2 spaces do just fine?
So the reduced 2-bedroom rate is reflective of the Campus Town Service Center
Which makes sense.
parking rate. And those were both generally within 500 feet of campus. So we thought that was a good mix or a good comparison. I think 1 space for 1 bedroom, again, based on our parking survey, that's also sufficient. The parking rates with bedroom counts over 2 units are more reflective of our downtown Gateway commercial district. They're not as big of a reduction. And those we based on the availability of public transportation, again, access to campus. So no, these are not new. We did look at other places that with similar transit and walkability in creating them.
I guess my follow-up to that is, why not just 2 for 3-bedroom units? Why 2.5?
That's certainly something the commission could recommend. We, again, just based it on downtown service center rates and based on the parking survey that we did, there were 2 spaces per, 2-bedroom units. So 1 per bedroom.
I think the other part was, remember, this is an applicant applied for interest that he has for a specific property, and then we tried to expand the concept to how would it be repeated again across the district. I think based on the proposal from the applicant, we believe the intent was to incent the smaller apartment units and not the larger student suite type apartments. The best way to manage that is generally through the parking rate. So that is why we were comfortable with the lower rates and then giving some reduction for the bigger ones, but not a substantial reduction, which would then incent the larger apartments again.
Yeah, makes sense. One last question. If all of the spaces in the proposed area were converted in some ways and we're able to take advantage of the reduction in parking and other benefits, would there be concern based on the current parking study about capacity?
When you say converted, I guess I didn't know exactly what you were talking about.
So this only applies if a property owner exercises an action to improve or rebuild.
Right.
Let's say they all do, okay, at some point, because this will become part of the code and it may happen over time. If over time say 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years hence, all of these properties are improved or replaced, what is the expected impact based on what you observe with the parking study? Are we still good? Or do we have concerns about overflow in other areas?
So you're saying, so I think we estimated based on like likely properties over 10 years. What was the number we had in the report
10 properties could be redeveloped based on,
with an estimated what?
and those could yield possibly a 15% increase in units and a 7% increase in bedrooms in the area. I think we looked at,
So we didn't go any further than that of trying to multiply out like a longer term horizon of change beyond those 10 properties. So we probably can't estimate that for you, but we could look into that if we needed to.
I just wonder, and this might be off topic, but we find ourselves a lot of times changing the code, which seems permanent for many different possible future uses. When the applicant is only asking for a specific use, why is this not so tightly written that it only applies to the applicant's request?
Yeah, so our position was that the request by the applicant fit city policy that should apply to a whole neighborhood. So in our minds, that it should not be about one property because the whole neighborhood within the comp plan is meant to be like the request of the applicant. So that's why the standards are written for the whole neighborhood. But to your point, it's only going to be applied on a property by property basis. So we're trying to balance the overall policy of the city for this area, but then review it on a case by case basis for the specific project. So in the last hearing, we talked about how staff is the approval authority with that process. This process will require a rezoning and a city council approval for every project. So let's say from your comment about, well, what happens if more and more things start to change? Well, the check in the system would be that we would be able to see every project that's coming through, and it's a council level approval. If things aren't working, council doesn't need to approve those future projects that might start to erode the parking supply and cause spillover events to the west of campus. So I think that's how we're trying to mitigate the potential unknowns while also supporting the more obvious redevelopment options that are in this area.
Makes perfect sense to me. Yeah.
I think that this is just a side comment. You're right. We see a lot of one-off text amendment requests, and you're kind of judging, should we do it for one or do it for all? The reason staff is endorsing this is because we set policy already. And it was one of those few times where we've had the applicant request be, I just want to do what you said you want to do in this area. Let's establish that tool and let's move forward with how we can get that done. So this is we've had a few of those in the last couple of years with Plan 2040, but that is exactly what this is in this case. And then to the west, as Amelia said, I guess the hatching is the redirection area designation on that map. Is that right? Okay. So we do have other planned studies that have not been prioritized by council in this general area. So along Lincoln Way, where you see UC, that's an urban corridor designation. That's on both sides of Lincoln Way, and it goes for about 4 blocks. That's a study area to look at zoning along that block in relation to Lincoln Way, which would most likely allow for other housing types. Many of those properties have a low density designation on them, and we'd want to look at some medium density options in that area. But then you have more single family and RH areas here that probably need to be studied, but council did not want to tackle that as a neighborhood study issue at this point in time. So you're going to see a study area for south of campus that's similar to this area that they prioritized first. So later this spring or early this summer, you'll be seeing a similar conversation, a little bit different context than this one. It's a little further from campus, but the same idea of a student populated neighborhood. So that's why we're focused here now. We will eventually, probably, assuming council wants to continue forward, look at these other areas west of here as well. And our outreach to date was focused on, remind me, we did everybody in this area, then how far outside?
we did
go?
400 feet outside.
So it's the yellow boundary plus 400 feet. So that gets to the edge of the neighborhood. I think historically, the neighborhood that you don't see on this map, which is just to the west of here, which is probably just outside of 400 feet, that single family area had a lot of concerns about the student housing population in this area, which is why the impact overlay exists. In council, that's one reason why we didn't keep going west, is council just wasn't in a position to want to engage in that conversation at this time, and to go back and talk with single family home neighborhoods about what are the ramifications of different things.
That answers one of my questions.
Okay.
I guess I know Jim was questioning on the one way of, in some ways, at least with the 2.5 down to 2, why do it that way and make it even more dense? I mean, we basically have a trade-off here that we have density goals that we would like to accomplish from the 2040 plan. We're trading parking spots to try to increase density on new builds, on infill development that we're going to have. I guess I just have some concerns. I mean, we basically know that most of these units are, this is my assumption, but being a student here, I would assume that these are going to be rental units where you're going to have one student per bedroom. You got a shared space, whether it's a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom, that's kind of how it works. Even when I saw the 1 car to 1 bedroom and then still 1 car for a 2-bedroom, I know that we don't want to overbuild parking, but that to me says there's going to be spillover somewhere if we're not accommodating for that. So I guess I'm curious, Amelia, about your parking windshield survey that you did and kind of what your actual staff thoughts are for accommodation and how you've seen. I have some concerns from a planning perspective, but I want to hear what you did, because it sounds like you did your homework.
So I think there is street parking. It does require understanding what side you can park on, what day of the week, and shifting that around.
Yeah.
I do think, though, that there is some available street parking. We also talked to Iowa State University, and students can take advantage of some of the remote parking, the commuter parking lot at Freddie if they really need a car and don't have space. I think for the 2-bedroom units, reducing it by 1 space, I wasn't, based on the windshield survey, so concerned about that reduction. I think there's a lot of non-conforming parking areas in this area. There's a lot of gravel parking. There's a lot of underparked areas. Most of the properties in this district do not meet the current required 1.5 spaces or 25% increase. So I think that's partially why staff is making that recommendation of,
We have a lot of non-conforming
we're really
in the
not
area.
meeting the current
Okay.
requirement as is.
Okay.
I will echo that. I actually lived in this general area when I was an undergraduate student, and yeah, I can very much confirm that. My apartment had 2 bedrooms, but only 1 spot for the 2 of us. So.
Okay.
I drove through the area this afternoon, and Highland Avenue does not have any parking.
No.
Sheldon has metered parking on one side. So that kind of leaves Campus Avenue and Oakland Street as spillover.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Can I ask one more question? Just trying to reconcile what you see, what I see on Highland, with the parking study on page 8, which shows almost all the spaces, with the exception of 140 Highland, under 70%, which generally indicates there's plenty of parking. Some of it could be time of day, but I don't know. I just come back to the idea that 2.5 for 3 bedrooms seems like maybe too much of a constraint, especially when there aren't very many 3-bedroom units planned. Perhaps the applicant could speak to that, what the mix of bedrooms is going to be. I don't see that. I don't see 259, 263 in the packet, unless I'm missing it in terms of
So
bedroom mix.
the rates that I provided in the addendum are for apartments that meet the current overlay standard of the 25% additional parking. So that's why I called those ones out. So you could see what was meeting it. But the applicant's properties are older properties and weren't included because they don't meet current standards.
So reducing it might increase the occupancy rate. And then if you also take into consideration the fact that some of the spaces are non-conforming, you might further increase the occupancy rate. But most of the buildings that were surveyed are less than 1-to-1.
Yes.
I don't know, it just seems like there's a lot of excess parking.
So I just want to make sure I'm keeping up. So you're looking at the first table in the addendum,
Yeah.
required parking and surveyed usage rates.
Exactly.
Right. And the data point that you are focused on of what she's presented is which column?
Mostly occupied spaces per bedroom. Most of
Okay.
those are less than 1. Even if you agree that, some of them are non-conforming and maybe they're already overparked in terms of requirement, they're still less than 1. Even with a 25% increase, most of them are just right at 1-to-1. It seems like in this area, 1-to-1 parking, 500 feet from campus, makes a lot of sense. I feel like
So
we did a
1-to-1.
project that had 1-to-1 about a year and a half ago.
1-to-1 is the city standard everywhere but the impact areas, campus town accepted. So your standard RH apartment project, it is a 1-to-1, effectively a 1-to-1 ratio
Yeah.
for bedrooms to parking. So as we alluded to, the 2 impact areas, because of the neighborhood input from 2006, added the 25% extra requirement. The rationale at that time was there was over occupancy of apartments. People put more people in the apartment. Therefore, more parking was needed in this area, even though it was walkable. So then the survey seems to not play out that thought, at least in 2025. It doesn't seem to be the same situation as 2006. So at a 1-to-1 ratio, a 3-bedroom would have required 3 spaces. We're proposing 2.5 spaces, correct?
Yes.
One other stat that I haven't looked at for Ames, what's our vacancy rate right now, especially with do we have a high vacancy of apartments that we need to consider of people not currently being parked?
There's
Okay.
almost no vacancy.
Okay.
I think, Jim, we'd probably have to play with this a little bit, but I mean, there's the one outlier of 244 Highland at 0.55 per bedroom, but
Yeah.
the other ones are pretty close. And generally, so the parking standard, an effectively fully utilized parking lot is at 90% capacity. They are always designed to not be 100%. So you have
Right.
guest parking, a little bit of whatever. So to me, if you're around 0.9, that's fully utilized. Smaller parking lots, that's not going to be a great sample, right? Small parking lot, a lot of variability there. But overall, to me, a 0.9 indicates full utilization. We did this in the morning. We did multiple visits. So I don't think day variability would be a factor either for more or less parking. I think, yes, you could always survey more and more. I wouldn't expect much variance in what we've observed if you picked a different day of the week or a different time of day. So I think it's a fair representation. And then I guess we're just kind of what's the policy that we want to support here. So I don't see it other than 244 Highland, which is interesting that it's so far under in terms of bedroom count. I don't see a lot of, I think it's a fairly reasonable rate as described in that column.
Yeah, I just have 2 thoughts and I'll be quiet. First one is, I think that in this particular use, you don't have a lot of guest access. I think people are walking based on my experience.
To campus, but
Or they're
I
taking
mean, you're
buses.
still going to have a car. Not every college student has a car, but many do to do grocery trips. And
Sure.
if you got to park it all the way down south on some commuter lot, you might as well not have a car, which in some ways, maybe you incentivize that because you want a high density area. But
And I guess to your point about what are we trying to incentivize here is that if you can reduce the parking burden to developers, then I think then generally they have more project income to develop more density or to do additional redevelopment. It seems unwise to require something that isn't going to be used. I think the better use of a developer's capital is to redevelop other spaces or to create higher density, higher uses. But that's all I have to say.
I think if it's new development, that if you build it, they will come. But if you don't build it, then people moving in there will not expect the parking. You kind of adjust your lifestyle, particularly the stereotype of the population of students. I know way back when I was in school that whether I was going to drive a car was dependent on the resources there and everything. And so it was an incentive to not drive. And just my son working on campus, as an example, he has available parking, but he bikes even in the wintertime just because it's campus and it's more convenient, even though he has a parking spot. And if we're talking taking away something from what is already developed, that's one thing. But when you have a new development, then people adjust to what's available, in my opinion.
I'll kind of echo that just from my perspective looking for apartments as a student. I mean, if both my roommate and I had vehicles, we probably wouldn't have looked in this area because we knew a lot of the apartments didn't have those parking spots available. So, I mean, yeah, I think it sort of flexes to serve different groups. Any other questions or comments for city staff right now? Then we'll go ahead and invite the applicant up if you'd like to make remarks.
Good evening, Chuck Winkleblack, Hunziker Companies, 105 South 16th Street. Just first want to thank Kelly and Amelia. We've been talking about this project or our project for a while now, but just a few points that have come up. If this project would not be, and I think most projects, new projects now would not be financially viable if they were under the old parking standards. It just wouldn't be. And so sometimes I've been in front of this commission and the council talking about things that may or may not be consistent with the city's plan moving forward. Whereas Kelly stated, we're just following what this commission and the city council said, this is where we want density. And I think it is. Obviously, the map shows that this is walking distance from the university, which is appealing. The other thing that we're talking against mandatory density requirements, and here we're asking it to be increased. I mean, when you think about the number of units and the number of bedrooms on what is 3/4 of an acre of a site, to think that we could get 40 units on there, we feel like is a good use of infill, does not require city improvements for infrastructure of any kind. So we feel like this is a good use. This is where we want the students to be. And yes, it will be 100% student rental in this location. But the other thing that doesn't show, and unless you've been out there and driven the site, is we have almost 40 feet of elevation change in a very short period of time. So we're been fighting some logistical challenges of making that work. But in our estimation, that's why, there aren't probably, again, I've looked at that in Amelia's thing, there might be 10, but realistically, there's probably only 4 or 5 more properties that would likely be redeveloped. The units that are 24, 30 units out there now have such significant value that the chances of them being torn down to be redeveloped are probably close to zero. So we appreciate the time that staff has worked on this and worked with us to make our project work, but also open up other avenues for other people. And to your question about occupancy, I think the vacancy rate we believe to be somewhere less than 2% community-wide. So there's a need for continued housing of all kinds in these areas where we want to have people that don't even necessarily need to use the bus system. We have a number of other 1 and 2 bedroom units that we own and manage in the area. A lot of the kids have gotten to the point where if they have a car in the commuter lot that they share, and when they all go get groceries, then they go together and do that kind of thing. So we find that even the places that we have, where we have the parking standards that on buildings that are 30, 40, 50 years old before the university impacted area was implemented, they find ways to work out so that they don't have to have as many cars here close to campus. And then we also find that in this area where we have a significant amount of international students that just don't have cars, period. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for the applicant?
Thank you.
I do have one, actually. I almost never have one. Come on back. So you obviously have a lot of interest in this happening. You need a certain density to make your projects cash flow. And we obviously want a certain amount of density in this area. That's the hope. It looks like the text amendment is allowing structures up to 45 feet tall. Just from a building perspective, is that 3 floors? I don't.
We've had, well, Kelly, I can tell Kelly's getting ready to talk, but we've had much discussion about where do you measure on something that is a very short period of time?
Yep,
And
I
where
agree.
does 45 feet, where do we measure 45 feet from? We believe that, that in both, there will likely be 2 buildings, one on what is the upper and one on the lower, that there'll be a level of parking and then 3 stories of livable units up above, that we believe that depending on where Kelly and Amelia decide to measure, and we don't believe there's going to be anything that really violates the height restriction. We're comfortable with that.
Oh, no, I'm not worried about violation of it. I'm just my line of questioning is you obviously need the buildable square footage on the lot to meet your density expectations. And I'm just wondering if you can go up instead of out, sucking up so much parking. But it sounds like you are your consideration is basically maxing all the buildable space you can plus vertical space in order to.
As Kelly, I think, stated in there, the site, the number of units that we are able to get is generally dictated by the number of parking stalls. So we feel like that the site is pretty well with the handicap accessible parking spots and those type of things that we need. We're parking with the area that we need for setbacks and landscaping and all those things. We're parking on about every square foot that we can. So even if we could go up higher, we probably wouldn't, because we just don't have places. We can't reduce the footprint of the building anymore to gain any more parking spots.
Yep.
To get to any higher density, even if we wanted to.
Thank you.
You bet. Anything else?
I'm just going to bring this up to talk about this. So Chuck's site is unique because of the grade change on it. Like most of the sites don't have the kind of issues we're dealing with on that site. So here's a good example of a 3-story and a 4-story building that are on Highland. So like a block down from the site. The 45 feet is essentially consistent with the current impact overlay. So Amelia mentioned in the presentation, we were trying to keep as many of like the essential elements of the form of the university impact area in this overlay as that one, changing parking and changing density, but trying to keep some consistency with what's built. So Highland has had a lot of redevelopment. There's a pretty consistent look down that street. So this is what 45 feet could permit still on a flat site for sure. So gabled roofs are measured to the middle of the pitch of the roof, flats measured to the parapet. So 45 feet, you can see that on this building, and then on West Street, across from West Street Deli is a 10-year-old apartment project also that is similar in style and height. So that's the kind of height that we think you will see for some of these projects. Again, that's what you get is a fairly tall 4-story building with a 45-foot height limit. I think that was our comfort level. I think if you go higher, you're definitely stretching maybe into a very compact 5-story building, but it's a different construction type and a lot of other things going on. So for us, 45 kind of met the character of what's been here and been approved.
Yeah.
And that's where we think we can fit everything that needs to be done within that envelope.
Yeah.
Which is, and I think when we kicked this off, which was a long time ago, council did have some discussion, like the intent of this neighborhood is to have density and be compact, but not the same as Campus Town, which is we're expecting 75 feet to 120 foot tall buildings, a totally different character and environment than this.
Right.
So that's where,
No, it wasn't a concern. It was just basically trying to figure out, can we still get the parking and get density in another way was the main line of questioning. But this look and feel, very familiar with the area. I just think we're going to take some parking to get some density expectations here. So.
All right. Then we'll go ahead and open the public forum. If anyone from the public would like to speak.
Go left.
Seeing none, we'll close the public forum and move on to final concluding remarks from staff or the applicant.
I don't have any unless there's further questions.
Any? Go ahead.
Could you, one more time for my benefit, like the request that this area be increased? What if that person or more than one person wants to pursue this down the road? Do they start at ground zero on the whole process?
No, so we'll have this overlay in place, and so it'll start with a rezoning. So once this is adopted, for instance, the applicant's next step will be to request a rezoning to apply this designation, and with that rezoning, it will come back to you with a site plan so you can see how things are laid out, the height, what the building looks like, and so that then it would be ultimately approved by City Council. So everyone will have to go through an individual rezoning process, but we won't have to rewrite the standards each time. We'll have uniform standards to apply
Within this
within this area.
area.
Yes.
But in order down the road for someone else in the adjacent area,
Oh,
is that starting back at?
I
Yeah.
see.
yes, if you're outside the yellow, this won't apply to you. Couldn't be done without some other version of a text amendment. And so that could be change the geographic limitation of this zoning district if that was desirable, or create an additional type of zoning further west to address whatever the desired improvements are in that area.
Okay.
But it would have to, like you're saying, it'll have to start over in some fashion.
That kind of gets at one last question I had, just with respect to the comments in the email about potentially expanding this to west to Campus Ave. I know you didn't do, or maybe you did, but didn't necessarily look at all of the properties in that area. Would there be properties on that just to the east of Campus Ave that would benefit from this?
I think per the person you received the comment from, yes. I think I've talked to other property managers and owners that also feel that there's properties with frontage on campus and on Highland, and they'd like to redevelop the campus frontage under these standards. But it doesn't apply on that side. So yes, I think there are several properties that would be interested. It's just a matter of, is this Are these standards also appropriate for campus? It's a little bit farther away. It's, a little closer to the single family residences to the west.
Yeah. There were a number of single-family dwellings on that street
Mhm.
when I drove it today.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so north of West Street is a low density zoning
Yeah.
district. So that's why you have a bunch of
Yeah, there are a lot of them.
detached structures that are rentals versus south of West Street towards Lincoln Way is where you've seen the redevelopment into apartments. So really campus is quite a bit different in the two blocks in this area. I think, I think there's a lot in that comment about how expansive do you want this to be. It's a reasonable thing to discuss. I think there's layers to that. If, as we've written it, you must have frontage on Highland to be eligible for this overlay. And so you have maybe 2 to 3 properties that are through lots between campus and
Yes.
Highland.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one level to say if you're a through lot to campus and you're going to maybe make an improvement on the campus frontage where now a building is taking out a parking lot, that's one way to look at that request. But then as you keep going through that, as Amelia said, if you start just reconfiguring existing space, but you don't get a benefit of improvement to the public realm or to the streetscape, how much of the goals of the RN4 designation are we accomplishing? So I think that's the part you have to weigh and balance in that comment is how much is just true density of value versus achieving the other intended outcomes of the RN4 designation through reinvestment and redevelopment in the area. So I think the west side of campus is kind of a hard line for us because that is a transition area that is yet to have any outreach, any discussion, any real understanding of what you're transitioning to the other side. The through lots are kind of a little bit different story in terms of already having frontage on Highland. And if you can walk through that site directly to Highland, you don't have to walk all the way around the block. Yes, your 500-foot distance is just as short as being on Highland almost. So I think it's a reasonable comment. We talked to them. We understand where he's coming from for that request.
Thank you.
Do we have other questions or any more discussion? It's the commission. All right. Does anyone have a motion they would like to?
I move approval of alternative 1 that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommends that the city council adopt the OWUPED as presented. Oh, short.
You should try and say that, Michael.
What's that?
Try and try to say WUPED. Just try and say it.
WUPED. You want me to say WUPED?
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of alternative 1 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed signify by saying nay.
WUPED would have been much easier.
See? Zoning's fun. I promise. It really is.
That's your lead.
Thank you. All right. Any commission comments? I would just comment, I appreciate the research and anytime you include a data table in the packet, I really enjoy that. So
She didn't trust my parking survey, so she had to do her own.
any other commission comments?
Next meeting?
Yeah, I think we should have that rezoning. So Auburn Trail, if you remember, on Hyde Avenue is a site that's been zoned but never platted. They're coming back with a rezoning to move forward with platting on that property. You should see that next time.
All right. Any other staff comments?
I do not have any other comments.
Then do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
All right. Meeting adjourned.